Recording.
All set. All right. Good afternoon. Welcome to our curriculum committee meeting, March 22nd. Do you want me to just go right down the agenda, or is there a different order, Frank?
No.
Or Karen?
I just wanted to mention that I invited Rick and Jen to be a part of the conversations today for the most part, except for the article discussion and grading for equity stuff I didn't send to them. But I did invite them for the Civic of Readiness and the other two other comments that are on there. So
great, and thanks for attending to both of you.
You're welcome.
All right, so why don't we just start with the first item, the seal of civic readiness.
All right, and that's Rick. Go right ahead, Rick.
All right, perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. So New York State has been piloting the seal of civic readiness, which is a stamp on the diploma. It's part of the 4+1 pathway. And this year, in August 1st is the deadline for next year to actually officially roll it out for schools. So we were looking at kind of offering it for our students that are interested in getting an extra seal on their diploma. So really quick, I want to go over some definitions. You have the civic readiness, which is the ability to make a positive difference in the public's life of our communities through the combination of civic knowledge, skills, actions, mindsets, and experiences. Along with civic learning, students demonstrate fundamental knowledge of social studies, engage in relevant experiences that includes students as active participants, and develops an understanding of self as part of a responsible to larger social groups. Whew, it's a mouthful. And then civic engagement, working to make a difference in the civic life of our communities and developing the combination of knowledge, skills, and actions, mindsets, and experiences necessary to make that difference. It means promoting the quality of life in the community through both political and non-political processes. So these definitions kind of encompass what the civic readiness is. And New York State found this important because they looked at some stats recently, and as of 11/19, the last election pre-COVID, only 22.7% of eligible voters actually voted in New York State. I got to fix that percentage, but and then only 26% of Americans can name the three branches of government. And as a social studies teacher, that is alarming to me. And then New York State ranked 47th in the nation for voter turnout, and we're one of the fourth largest. We are the fourth largest state. So it was alarming to the state, so they came up with the civic readiness in order to get our students more apt to be engaged in either our communities or the state as a whole. So these two go hand in hand. They made this go back and forth on the slides that I was looking at. So ensuring students have the opportunity to acquire and develop knowledge, skills, and actions, mindsets, and dispositions they need to function productively as civic participants who can engage responsibly in our cultural diverse democracy, and then help empower students to develop their ability to make informed decisions to enhance our connected world, and to believe in the power of their own voices and actions. So they were looking at this, and that's something we want our kids to do, is be participant, be able to engage back and forth and kind of move our society and world forward. And then New York State gave just some of their goals. I'm not going to read through them all, but the last one is the big one. Prepare 21st century skills, which is a big thing for us as a district and what we look for when we're doing classroom observations. Recognizing the value of K through 12 social studies education in schools as means to build civic knowledge. And then the New York State Seal of Readiness shall be awarded to students who meet the criteria of this subdivision and complete all criteria prescribed by the Commissioner of New York State and high school approved by the Commissioner. So it asks they could take a math, social studies, science, English regions. So one of the four major regions plus do this civic readiness seal, and that would count as the fifth regions, or it would actually be a standalone document next to the diploma as an added benefit for graduation. For employers will know that the student that chose this pathway is leaving with this extra set of skills with this seal. You can go ahead, Karen.
Can we just go back one step just for a quick second?
Yep.
I also wanted to point out, I think it's important that one of the New York State goals is empower our students as agents of positive social change.
Oh, there it is.
This goes along with the board DEI policy and giving student voice, because you can't have change without student voice. So this actually incentivizes a little bit the idea of student voice and change within our school community. And, it helps. If I was a student and I wanted to have a little bit more, right? We talk about always giving our students more opportunity. This is another opportunity for our students to participate in student government, but also enact social change. So just wanted to point out that one of the goals is part of the component.
It's on my notes, but I missed that piece. So thank you.
Well, I know just because we talked about it, so I wanted to make sure I said it.
So this is why I just kind of explained. So I jumped ahead of myself. You have the 4 regions that are mandatory, and that +1 that could be an extra math, extra science, extra social studies. You can actually use this process to get that 5th region, so to speak, or it can be a standalone diploma seal for students who choose a different 4+1 pathway. So someone can still go on and take the extra math, geometry and algebra, but then still get this seal as well. So it's all different ways to do it. And how do students qualify? They must earn 6 points with at least 2 points from each. There's 2 different criteria. There's the criteria for demonstrating proficiency in civic knowledge and criteria for demonstrating civic participation. So in the next slide, I kind of broke those down into the charts. You can kind of see what you can do. And then the little asterisks next to the numbers means kids or students can get that twice or more than once. So you'll see like 1 point, they get 1 point for completing just the social studies pathway. So getting through all the 4 social studies that you need for 9 through 12. If they pass the regions with a mastery level for social studies, they get 1.5 points, and they can do that twice. So they can take the US history and the global regions and get those to mastery, and they can get 3 points in theory. If they get just a proficiency level on one of the exams, that's 1 point. 0.5 point for advanced social studies courses. So that's like AP courses that we offer. If they do a research project that you can embed in a class, that's another point. On that left side, you need 6 points total, so at least 2 points from each. And then on the demonstrating civic participation, a lot of it's community service hours and doing types of projects in the community and then writing about it and kind of giving like a digging deeper rather than just getting the 15 hours of community service. They do 25 hours of community service. And then they write a report on what they found or what they did. So it's a little more grit to the actual requirement that we have already. And then they can also do, if they want to kind of just go all for it, there's the Capstone project, which would be 4 points. And it would just mean that they do 4 points and they would just basically take their regions and their basic classes and get done. And the Capstone project can be a wealth of things. The state had like a 10-page document of suggested capstone projects that kids could choose to do. But if someone didn't want to do that and put all their eggs in one basket, they could mix and match and get their 6 points. So it seemed really doable for a student and a great added benefit.
Rick, a capstone is similar to the Eagle Scout project as well, correct?
Yes. Yep. So if students were doing something in the community already, they could just make it look nice and fancy and be done with it for the school. So.
I can't believe how flexible it is. I mean, when I look at this and think about how easy it would be, not easy, but how doable it would be to get 4 points. Well, on the right side, if you're really into that capstone project idea, that's, obviously very easy. But even the fact that you're just getting a point for what's required to do to graduate, and then if I hit an 85 or above, I have another 3 points on those 2 exams. That's amazing.
We have students now in the middle school that are going to the high school that started the Visibility Club and are talking about student voice and doing these things. That pairs amazingly well with this, right?
But that middle school capstone project, that's a point already that they can come into high school with. So you can really embed this. Like Tom Glad and I were talking, we could take time over, we could roll this out, but we could really tighten it over, a year or two and find ways to embed a lot of this stuff in the curriculum that we're already teaching and doing. So it would just be like an added benefit to a class. Hey, you want to do the capstone, then you want to do the seal of civic readiness, then here's 2 other things in the class you have to do, but it's already baked into the curriculum. So it wouldn't be that much of a heavy lift for students.
Some of the things the Equity Club is starting in middle school that will be segueing, we're transitioning up to high school 9 and 10 would go along with part of that as well. So it's great. Anything to get civic understanding and involvement as a former history teacher.
I think on the next slide, Karen, I have like next steps.
Well,
So,
Commissioner, do you have questions before we get into that?
yep.
I'm sorry, what, Frank?
Do you have questions before we get into the next?
Yeah, I have questions, but
Yeah,
I didn't know if it was going to be covered.
No, go
later.
ahead. Yes, no.
Go for it.
Ask now?
Yeah.
Well, one was going to be when does it start, but I think that's on the next slide.
Yeah.
I was also, is this optional for us to do or we're required to as a district?
Totally optional.
Optional. And it sounds like you had started to answer one of my questions was like, how do kids do this? Like who leads them through a capstone project? But you're envisioning it as embedded in existing classes and the existing teacher would help them?
No,
So-
we're going to talk about that at the end. We'll kind of get into it more, but that's a great question because still more to talk about. But there was an initial conversation between Rick, myself, and Tom Glad, but there's a lot more I think that we can do with this and go forward. But I don't know if Rick has that planned.
Yep. I have that, a little bit of that. So I want to get.
Do you have questions up until this point?
Go ahead, Rachel. You have some?
Yeah. What does the seal get you? Like, you just have a seal on your diploma?
Well,
I'd like to understand that.
Well, I think I think the question is going to be this. Does the district want to be able to, this is another way to craft opportunities for our students for civic engagement, to give them something which gives it a structure, right? So the seal, what it does is, if you look at it for the basic, it's a seal of endorsement that goes on the diploma that states that a child created civic engagement within their school community. In the simplest terms, that's what the seal is. What it does mean for the district, though, it means that the middle school and high school are now creating opportunities and encouraging students to have civic engagement within our school community and creating structures for them to do so to impact positive change on their kids. So if it's already happening stance-wise, this is an opportunity that could possibly lead to the district to do so. It's not something that we have to do. It's not something that all districts will do, but it's another opportunity that our students didn't have before that would be an easy lift to give our students an opportunity to do.
I can see how that would be something that a student might want to even think about in terms of writing an essay for college. You know, I'm achieving this seal. This is work I started as a middle school student and I've carried through my high school years. I can see that being kind of something that might resonate, you know.
But we also have kids are very socially aware and who want to enact change. And this is an opportunity for them to do so and be acknowledged for it on their diploma that they did. What's your thought, Rachel? Do you think it's not something?
No, I do see that very, very much. I have 2 questions, which is there any cost to the district? And then the other thing is, if this comes from a desire to have more people vote, absentee ballots seem to be like really good at that. So in some ways, it's like there's the whole informed voter, educated voter, and so on. So those aspects of it, I see how this fits in, but it's kind of, to me, it's like, let's have the schools take care of the problem rather than let's make voting easier. So I just look at it as like one more opportunity to say, okay, schools, we have a problem, you guys solve it. And if there's any cost to the school, it makes it even funnier to me.
Okay.
So.
I didn't look at it through the voting lens. Like, honestly, that's not even where I saw it was opportunity for kids.
New York State, I'm sorry. New York State on the website, when I was reading through it, envisioned this as being much more of a student goes to apply for a job or applies to college, and the college or job sees that they have this seal, and it automatically puts them like at a next step up, like, oh, this person's doing some really great work in their community and have a talking point. They're envisioning it being a bigger or broader piece in the workforce and in colleges in the area.
Cost of the district would be a 6th class for a teacher, so $4,000.
Why would it need a teacher? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Because you need somebody to oversight it for the kids. We want them to be independent, but as you were saying, who's going to make sure that, you know, they're tracking their progress or talking to the students about who's doing, you know, what they're doing or what their capstone is. I mean, the idea is, and Tom said, you know, we want these kids to be independent. I mean, if we're talking about social awareness and doing this, we want them to, you know, do this themselves. They still need oversight, right? There still needs to be someone there saying, here's how we're getting them to do it. Here's how it is, and checking off the boxes, helping the kids make sure it does. Kids can't do all this stuff on their own. So that would be the cost of the district is basically an on-site supervisor to be able to help the students kind of go through this situation and make sure that they hit all that they are doing.
And we had reached out to Shen. They were part of the pilot, and their social studies supervisor was actually on the pilot committee. And she actually said that in an email to Tom that was forwarded to me was that don't expect the students to complete it without a mentor's help, just because someone needs to guide them through it. It doesn't need to be as big as Shen did, but because Shen's obviously a lot larger than us. But they did recommend looking for ways to have some type of advisorship to this, to allow the students to progress and not get stuck, and help guide them through the best project to do, make sure their hours are there, kind of push it in the right way. Because if you don't kind of, you know, give them that gentle nudge, they might take the easier route. And we want to make sure that they're really kind of challenge themselves enough to make a substantial change in the community as well. So to get something out of it rather than just the seal on their diploma.
And Frank, what did you think that looked like here? Did you say 0.6?
No, not a 0.6. No, a 6th class. So, you know, and we're not sure if it would be a stipended, like, extracurricular club thing that goes within it. So it's like a mentorship. You know, we were talking about it with Tom and Rick, you know, because we just kind of talked about this a month ago. You know, we were trying to envision the real way it would look and, you know, how it would be. And we're still trying to figure it out because, you know, we first said social studies teacher. Then I'm like, wait, why couldn't an English teacher? Why couldn't, you know, there's other people that could really like help lead the kids through this. It doesn't have to be initially social studies. So I think there's opportunity here, you know, and if you look at a lot of the survey stuff and look at the other things and look at the DEI and look at the things that we're trying to do, kind of melds right along with opportunities for kids and student voice and, you know, leading the district forward. And again, these types of things, as Rick said, in my mind, you start off with 5 kids, you know, or you start off with 6. And then in the next year, this is one of those things that you build and build and build. And it's something that can take on a life with it. I could see it taking on a life of its own. And just, you know, and the kids get the seal, but I think you could get so much more out of it.
Frank, if I may, I think it also is something, as you said, not everybody does this. It's something that would set us apart.
That's what
And we are looking for things that will set us apart, make us unique. And, you know, as we think back to when years ago when we had to start cutting programs and cutting electives and cutting, this would be a new, unique opportunity. What's gone is gone, and we may or may not replace, you know, ever be able to build all of those things back, but times have changed. So putting back something new and current seems like a great opportunity for the kids. And it does sound like maybe some carryover between middle school and high school and connections between the buildings, if I'm understanding, which also would be a great way to build the school community even more. So it seems like a really positive opportunity.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head. We're a small school, and it's always like, oh, small schools can't offer stuff. Well, yes, you can. We just got to find the ways to do it. And this is a way that we can offer something that, you know, now there's a pathway for other things too, but some of these things are really difficult to do. This is an easier one that we can make happen. And I think we're already doing it. We already make our kids do community service. I mean, not all schools do that, right? So why not take it to the next level? You know, I wouldn't make every kid do this, and nor do they have to, but it's a great opportunity for a lot of our students. So, and it's an easy lift because all we have to do is apply for it.
Well, and then do it. Frank's like, yeah, but
I can say from the middle school level, we've got a crew of 7th graders right now that would love this. All right. They've already submitted, like, we want a debate team. We need to do this. I had a group that came to meet with me that, I wish when I was teaching, I had 11th graders that knew as much about government and things that were going on. And I think we do have a crew that coming up that would do something like this, as well as some of the other opportunities, just because it's of an interest that's there, because they are becoming more global and trying to understand what's going on.
Any other thoughts on this?
I love that middle school can participate as well, because I know a lot of middle school kids are eager to do extras, and there aren't a lot of extras.
And that middle school capstone project really initiates the kid into it. We're seeing that as the pathway, right? And if you get kids engaged now in 7th and 8th grade, what are those kids going to be like by the time they're seniors? What kind of impact can they make then? Especially if they have, a goal too, is to reach that goal, is to get that seal. On top of it, it keeps it moving.
Yeah. No, it's great to have another opportunity, like Kelly said.
I like the integration of classwork and community projects, and also potentially it's another opportunity for students to engage with a teacher who can be there and be another person who can be a mentor, a guide, or just another way of connecting to the teaching community.
And lastly, I think the one thing we just didn't talk about before we end this is, this isn't just for our higher achieving kids, right? This is for any student, right? Any student can be civically engaged and socially engaged in their community.
Well, that's a higher achievement to me.
Well, it is, but we're talking, we always talk about how we create opportunities for our upper level academic students, right?
Okay.
It isn't an opportunity for upper level academic. It is, but it's also every ability level of our students, population, do something like this and get the feel, even if we had a student who was getting, let's say we had a student who was getting a skills diploma or a local diploma, they could still get another seal of endorsement, which they would never see or not have that extra thing that would set them apart because of this. So, it levels that playing field a little bit. And, just for these kids who feel like maybe they can't always meet the criteria of everyone else.
And Frank, I love that you brought that up, because when they talk about giving credit, that one point for each of the global and the U.S. history in being proficient, that includes the safety net. So if you're somebody who has to be a 55, that's counting as proficiency. It's not that you have to meet the 65.
So it just like I said, it incorporates everything we're trying to do. Sounds good?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I'll start that process.
If we apply now, when do you envision it could start?
It would be for next school year.
Oh, really?
This fall.
Maybe this fall. Yep.
Wow. That's a quick turnaround.
So they turn it around that fast because
Yes,
it's due until August?
They said it was we're applying for the 22-23 school year. So.
Oh, okay. I guess there's no review because there's nothing.
There's a lengthy paper. There's like decent questions that they want you to fill out, but they work with you to go back and forth because they want this off the ground. So Tom and I work together, and then we'll work with Shen too, because he's a good relationship with them, just to make sure we're on the same page. So.
And it's not something the kids have to actively enroll in. So if like a junior or senior can pull it off, that's fine, right?
Yep.
They don't have to. Okay.
And I'm sure when this gets announced, since this is new, I'm sure there will be a little bit of release for this as well. Like, attention to what schools are doing this first. Because usually when new things like that, right, Rick?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like make a list out of New York State. Here are the schools that are doing the seal. So, it will be like, as Kelly said, there will be the schools that are, and then clearly the schools that aren't.
Right.
So.
And Frank, you can absorb this in our current budget, or do we have to add like?
No, we have budget room and built in for 6 classes.
Okay.
here. So we have the leeway built in already because we know that we're always going to have the flexibility based upon what our needs are. Because we never know. Like if we have extra sections that we want to add, we already have that already built in because we want to have that. We want to have the ability to add classes and add a 6th without having it be a huge budgetary expense. So we already kind of build those in.
Great.
And we're already paying the insurance and everything else. The $4,000 isn't really a giant jump, and like it would be for a teacher with insurance and everything else that goes on.
Mm-hmm.
Next part.
So I just brought us right back to the agenda, so we could just follow through if that's okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So kind of just wanted to go over the update for the school year. So the addition of the business teacher.
Yes.
So that was one that, we've been talking about. Jen can speak towards that a little bit more. We've been having issues. Trish, you actually brought this up a year ago and about continuity of program. And so if we can offer something one time, always being able to continually offer it over and over again. And then Rachel brought it up when we were talking about the 5th class for 6th grade when they were coming in and offering classes. And, as we get more enrollment, how do we make those class sizes smaller without losing things? So that STEM program, that 6th grade curriculum that Shauna built is really part of that. So Jen, do you want to speak about it?
Yeah, so this actually gives us the chance to have enhance what we've been doing since Shauna was teaching the class, and we've been filling it in. It will give us a consistency.
But you've been building in.
Go through with computer.
Hold on. I just want to state, you've been filling it in with teachers that now have to teach a class because of class sizes. So that's an issue.
Yes.
Okay.
This will give us some consistency now moving in. It's not, and exactly how we can build it and hopefully, get students excited as they're moving into high school. It's keyboarding, it's Google Suite, which may not sound like a lot, but trust me, there's a whole lot once you start doing the add-ons and the other pieces. The applications for that, the extensions, digital citizenship, and we'll have the opportunity to do this in certain parts of it with 6th and 7th grade on a consistent basis now, because our numbers aren't getting smaller in our school community. And it will be something that we can put out for all students. Certainly makes them even more ready as they're moving into high school and some of the different opportunities that they're going to have, regardless of where their interests are. And I'm excited to finally have the chance to say we have a consistent slot for this and a consistent teacher, that can certainly work with Shauna and as we move through.
Rick, you want to talk about the high school component?
Yep. So we're looking at trying to bring back work-based learning because there's been a need for that. And then also coupling that with career exploration in, CEIP? I had it written down earlier.
Career exploration internship program,
which allows students to do a little bit of, what's going on in the community, what do they like, and then finding a job that fits that and getting them to out there working in it, trying it out. And then so often our business classes at the high school are jam-packed. Students actually get knocked out of some of those electives, like career financial math students, that's a requirement for graduation, and we can't fit enough sections in our current schedule. She has right now 25 computers, and we have 30 kids in some of those classes. They're using Chromebooks, which works, but it's a lot. So we're looking to, bring those numbers down a little bit and actually offer some work-based learning in CEIP and giving students some more electives every year instead of being blocked out and getting a study hall because they can't fit into a class.
And there were 2 business teachers at one time, correct?
That's what I heard, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we used to have, yes. Sorry.
Not 2 full-time, I don't think, right?
I don't know. Were they full-time?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think it was one full-time and part-time.
Yeah. We're pushing.
In the time I was here, we had a part-time, but again, that was nothing that was permitted at the middle school. Long before I was here, there were other OC-Ed pieces that had been in middle school that had left.
So when it's the addition of a business teacher, is that the person who would be teaching the 6th grade and potentially 7th grade?
Yes.
And so the word business is being used to mean computer literacy and all those other things. And Mrs. Garvey is amazing and gives a fabulous graduation speech. Is she like, does she have any, has she made any movement, not that I want her to, towards retirement?
Even if I'm going to say the answer is this, and I have to, even if she did, I couldn't say it publicly here.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, that's not something we can talk about like that.
Mm-hmm. She talks about it in class.
Yeah. Well, what people do and what I do are two different things.
Exactly. Okay. So, right. Good point. So the computer literacy would become a full year course for the 6th grade? Would that be?
No, it would be part of our, would be in with our specials rotation. So it would be an every other day class for half a year in 6th and 7th grade.
Didn't 6th grade used to have a foreign language in it? Like when my kid was in 7th grade.
Years ago, they had
Not since I've worked here.
Jen, I'll answer this. Years ago, there was one here, and it was for foreign exploratory when you had the two different languages. So you had French and Spanish. So it was, which one do you like? So you can take it on the 7th grade. It was in
Gabby had that. So it was his,
Yeah.
Gabby might have been the last year. She's a freshman in college.
Okay. So it's right before juniors right now. Yeah, that kind of flows into the next item on the agenda of the World Language Program. So
Are you?
I was just wondering what the new course request was then specifically.
We're just talking about the new course requests, of an update of where we are with the English creative writing and the English courses, how many people have signed up for it. That's what that was.
Just wanted to update everyone to let them know that, obviously they're still doing all the scheduling and I don't think guidance is caught up with everything yet, but it just wanted to say that it looked favorable. We have 28 who are already requesting creative writing and 29 already requesting public speaking. So, if all goes well, it looks like those will both be, full courses. I know they still have to schedule these and 7 for AP Spanish. I think, originally we said we had 10 students who were saying yes. So right now it's at 7, but could be more.
I still had some questions on the business teacher. I'm sorry.
Oh, sure.
So we're recommending hiring one full-time person to handle the fact that there's 5 sections of 6th grade?
No, it's not full time. So that was where Jim kind of threw it off. It's a 0.6 business teacher and a 0.4 TA or aide. Since we're going to need that aide for next year already, because of we already have the opening. So
is it the same person or it's 2 different?
No, it's the same person. So it's the ability for us to get a full-time person. So we've done this already. We have a reading teacher who's also a teacher assistant or a teacher aide.
Okay.
So it's the same idea as you hire a 0.6 teacher to meet the needs of what you currently have. And that would meet our needs, as it's 3 classes, 3 full section wise. And then the 0.4 is the aid section that we need. So we already have that already budgeted out. So it's the 0.6 is the new part of it. But we're asking for one full person because it's usually you can get somebody for a full day in comparison to doing part-time. It makes it a little bit more enticing.
So the 0.6 is teaching in a class in the middle school, a class in the high school, and doing work-based learning?
Yeah, that's 3.
And the work-based learning is what Jeannie Young used to do? That's that program?
Right. Yep.
And are there certain certifications? I thought she had to go through some craziness.
And they can. Rick?
Okay.
Do you want to speak?
I was just going to say, we're going to look for someone to do that that already has that WBL, and if not, they can get certified over the summer to do that work. It's more hour based than it is actual like process. So I know people that have done it pretty easily.
Oh, okay.
And I think it's important to note, business teacher, that content isn't just business anymore. It really is a lot of components that go into that. There's computer science, there's digital graphics, there's things that go into, like, a business teacher can do a lot more than just, like, some business teachers do a whole digital graphics class, and they
Right.
and they do that, and that's and that, Karen, I'm correct, that goes along with SIRS, right? So underneath the SIRS manual, SIRS manual is something that we're guided by in school districts, where you have to code it to certification levels, which shows if you're a certified teacher or not in certification. And underneath business teacher, there are a lot of classes that fall in line with a business certification.
That helps understand.
That's what I figured, because
The phrase business teacher, I'm just like,
yeah.
what sixth grader needs to learn about checkbook balancing?
Yeah.
Although I'm not saying it's a bad idea.
Yeah. Now, keyboarding, everything goes in. There's about 25 or more classes. Am I correct in saying that, Karen?
There are a lot. I would have to double check.
Yeah.
Because we haven't had the need for me to check those, because we have the same things all the time.
Yeah, but business teachers are certified to be able to teach a wide variety of classes. Many we don't offer. So.
And what is SIR? Sorry.
Go ahead.
SIRS is it's a Student Information Repository Center, right? Is that SIRS manual? Thank you. I can't believe I pulled that one out right there. SIRS manual is something that the school districts utilize. If you ever were really interested in reading it, it's about that thick.
Perfect.
And it goes through all your reports, everything that you have.
Everything that's required, all the mandated reporting, really.
Yeah, it's mostly data coordinators really know what a SIRS manual is and go through it more.
Just really quickly, the computer problem, is that being addressed in the tech plan, Frank? That Miss Garvey doesn't have enough computers for her kids?
So that's just because of class sizes, like in the room. So she has computers. We don't have the room to add more. That's the issue.
Oh, there's no space.
Yeah.
I don't
Literally
even know.
no space.
Standing room only.
That's the issue. I mean,
Or Chromebook
you
only.
got a class that has a set space for 25. I mean, we can get all brand new computers and we can add it, but she doesn't have room for the next 30, So that's part of the issue.
Gotcha.
So the AP Spanish course, is 7 students enough to warrant the course? I don't want to take it away from kids, but I also want to understand that. So that's a new course request.
Right. So I think that's the question you have to ask yourself. In my mind at this moment, we have Spanish that goes all the way through. We currently have Carrie Martinez, who is the teacher that we've hired, who was doing, so we already had a 0.6 Spanish that was left. We had a teacher who left that did Spanish and English. So we hired Shannon Spolin and Carrie Martinez. So full-time English, full-time Spanish to take on that and the other stuff. Carrie was taking on also some of our tutoring on top of the Spanish courses. So now we have Carrie who can take on an added section of Spanish to help Jen Fold's level and class sizes. And that AP Spanish, which would lead to her next full-time, would lead to her being full-time and give our students who are seniors an opportunity to give that final, because we don't have an opportunity for our kids. They go all the way through, they do all this work, and then when they hit after Spanish 4, they got nothing. And they're a full year out without anything. And if those kids want to go on to school or go on to have that AP credit, they don't have an opportunity. So we're losing that opportunity for our kids. I mean, could we not offer that and offer a 0.8 teacher? We could. But I think we're losing out on an opportunity for those kids that we can meet right now.
Mm-hmm. And Trish, I remember you talking about language and some colleges and so on with the language requirements, and the missing that year of language can mean something.
They usually expect students to take a semester or a year of foreign language, and if you want to stick with what you you've been doing, and now you have your whole senior year without that language. College moves very quickly with language. So what you do in a semester or a year in college is obviously much faster than what you'd be doing in a semester or a year here, in high school. So I think it really does benefit those kids who are interested in, and, again, we don't have all the numbers in yet, so that might still grow.
Do you have any, I know this would be hard to predict, but do you think, I would guess that something would grow the longer we have it? Like this was just asking the exact group that's there now, but if kids are planning on it ahead of time, maybe they'd be more likely to take the 4th Spanish. I don't know.
And you offer Spanish level 1, 2, 3, 4. These kids are now, oh, I get another one I get to. I mean, the kids who are already in level 2, right? They made it. They said, all right, level 1, I'm good. I can go on to level 2. Oh, you know what? They could stop at level 2 because a lot of kids do. And then, or they go on to level 3. Now they're on a progression path. It almost might become something where it's like, okay, this is what I just have to do, right? It just becomes another course, a part of their levels to move forward. So,
Yeah, I don't know.
yeah,
It's
but
something that might be helpful for the guidance department to be able to help kids understand as they're planning, if they're college bound and what they're thinking to do. 'Cause I know you can get college credit if you take Spanish all the way through, versus otherwise sometimes then you have to start over and take a first year language at a college. And maybe families wouldn't necessarily understand that. So might be something guidance can help with if we decide to do this.
anything else?
All right. Anything else from anyone on the new course request? All right, guess keep going. Is it Karen still? Or Frank?
Well, I think this is you guys. So
Okay.
a conversation came up at the board meeting, and Rachel, you mentioned world language. So Cindy said, let's put it onto the agenda for curriculum. So I think it was just a conversation that the board wanted to have about world language program and what you were thinking and ideas and thoughts.
This came out of the survey results. We had
Right.
that survey, and there was a pretty number 1 or 2 or something, a very high number of people responded that one of the things they'd like to see more of and miss at the absence of is more language options or another language option in the district. And there was some discussion of this being a cultural opportunity for students. This kind of plays into the idea of diversity, where learning a language really helps you learn the culture of another region of the world or other regions of the world. So I see that as fitting into different potential areas that we asked the community for their response. They responded, and also the fact that we're really trying to enhance the opportunity for students to learn more about the diverse world that we live in. And there's clearly an opportunity for kids to explore other languages as a pathway to exploring the rest of the world.
So I think that's why you said a word that I think is important, explore, right? So the question is going to be is, what does that look like? And what opportunities and pathways can we do? Because there's your traditional pathway of, okay, I have Spanish and I have German, or I have Latin, or I have French, or I have this. And you have 2 choices, or you have the exploration of diverse amounts and how much is amount that you want to give. So is it, do I want to give Mandarin, right? Because some schools teach Mandarin. Or do I want to give the opportunity for kids to learn Pashto, or, or Hindi, or other different languages, or sign language, right? Or even programming. Because guess what? Programming is a language and we don't offer it. So I think that's, the question is, where do we go? And, what pathways do you take to get there? Because, we were talking, Jen and myself were talking about, and Rick, we were all talking about programming. We have kids who would love to program, right? And learn that language of programming and coding, yet we don't teach that at all. So we don't teach that technology language, which I believe, Rick, they are trying to make that a language course. Am I correct in saying that?
They're trying to, and I also know the world language of New York State is fighting it because they don't believe that it's a cultural thing. But I do know that New York State's also a few times it's been on the floor to be passed and it's been pushed back. So it's going back and forth.
So programming is one, but I also want to talk about, there is distance learning courses that offer sign language, offer Mandarin, offer all of these other courses for kids that can be explored. It's just, you have to first have kids who are interested, sell it, and then create schedules that meet the needs of those students. And those have very minimal impact on budget.
I know plenty that wanted to do sign language and just couldn't get in.
Yeah, that was
So
a
I don't know
recollection.
if it's as simple as just saying there's distance learning.
So, well, let me explain to you my thought process on this. And Rick is smiling because he knows my thought process on distance learning. And Kelly's looking down because she knows my thought process on this. You have to create a schedule to change that. So you can't expect that the schedule that we have is going to match the schedule of all other school districts that offer distance learning, right? So it's like a singleton. So when you're scheduling, you have a singleton, and those are going in a very certain place, and you have to make sure when you're scheduling them, kids can get in it. Well, if my singleton starts at 7:30 for sign language and my school doesn't start until 7:40, well, then I already knocked my kids out of it. So the way that I change that is I then create school to start for those kids at 7:30. And then I create the opportunity for them to be in it. And that's distance learning, is you have to create those opportunities or look at your schedules and times and figure out a way that you can make those work for those kids. And Rick is looking at different ways to be able to do that now, to be able to utilize our distance learning in a better way. Because that is one of the major components. And
Well, I think it was that, but it's also the lack of knowledge of if you'll be able to get into a class as a district year after year. Like, you can't count on a sequence so far from what I've seen in our district from a distance learning offering. So if you're counting on sign language to be your language, and you get in sign language 1, you might not get in sign language 2, at least from what I've
That's
seen.
correct, Trish, from DL for sign language in particular. That is correct.
I love DL and how it offers so many opportunities very cheaply, but it seems kind of like a random, like if you're really trying to make a pathway, I don't know how you could count on that being your pathway as a student.
well, that's why I meant explore or pathway, right? And I think that's the conversation that has to be had is, are you looking for pathways or are you looking for exploration?
It seemed like the community was looking for a pathway. From the way I read the survey, I don't know if Rachel or Frank, you both read it.
It seems like there's a tangible language offering that was what was wanted. And my recollection was that something like Mandarin would be a very hard thing to do via distance learning. You need to have someone in the classroom, just to assist the students with the distance learning process. But what I remember being told, and I'm very welcome to be welcome any suggestion or correction, is that it would really help if someone in the classroom spoke Mandarin, because there's a need for support beyond just making sure that everyone can hear the audio and the visual work, and everyone has whatever they need in front of them with something as complex as that.
I mean, Frank, what would you recommend if the community wanted that? Like, what would you see could work here?
So we've been talking about this for a while now because, again, I've read that survey also. It's not something ignored. So,
No.
I'd look at something, first it would have to be start probably 7th or 8th grade if you're looking at a dual pathway. But I look back at the numbers that were given for French, and then, the drop-offs that, you were seeing from French 1 to French 2. Again, I'm just looking at the minutes from the old meetings and stuff that came up. There was a really big discrepancy of drops, So my question is, what do people want, right? What is going to encourage people to be a part of a program that can have sustainability, and be able to still offer, like, okay, great, let's offer German. Okay, that's great, but I'm only going to get 10 kids or 20 kids in level 1, and then level 2, I'm down to 5. And then by the time I'm in level 3, those kids aren't taking it, but I still have a large amount. Well, that failed. So it's hard because I don't know the right course. And I
Got
think that's going to have to come through, we talked about doing surveys next year and really trying to figure out what's the right path and what meet the needs of our kids. Like, I'm sure if we gave programming, right? And I'm not saying because, again, that's a pathway, but not a pathway. But let's say you gave programming, you might get kids to do that for another 4 years, and then it might drop off. But you could have an influx. So we might have kids that say sign language, and I think that's a very viable option, to be honest with you. I know kids love sign language. I know that I know a lot of kids I think would be interested in taking it. Then how do you then find a teacher for sign language? And then is it a 0.4? Is it 2 years? Is it 2 classes? Or can you do a partnership, right? And can you again guarantee a partnership with, let's say, Guilderland or North Colony, where then you guarantee that you have that pathway each year?
Yeah.
I think there's options, but there's many options and many ways and routes to go. And I think we just have to figure out, what direction the board wants to go on this. And I can easily go. It's just we have to figure out where the ultimate end is going to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I think being smart about it, like we just talked about the other programs. Yeah, I would love your energy to figure out a way to offer more to the kids.
So we were planning on next year really diving deep into this and having a better understanding of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have a good answer. I know Rick is trying to get connections, but
You need a sign language teacher that can also speak another language.
That would be ideal.
Simple.
right. Or what? Or we can just train Carrie Martinez to do that.
So in the meantime, though, for next year, we requested every single Mandarin and sign language class is offered in DL because there's several districts that are offering it. So I put our name in the hat for all of them just to be able to have a spot. And then I am friends with the foreign language supervisor at North Colony. So I'm going to reach out and have a conversation with her around what type of things maybe we can work out down the road to get some type of programming, because they offer French, German, Russian, Spanish, and Latin over at North Colony to see what that looks like, or if she has any other ideas. So I'm going to reach out to her this next week to start that conversation, because I ran into her just a few days ago. So,
and I also know that Burton Hills is interested in partnering with us as well, and they offer a lot of DL courses, so they're interested in guaranteeing us pathways as well as a partnership.
Well, maybe when Rick, you talk to the other district, you could see what's very popular at their school if we're trying to figure out what might be a good offering here.
It's a great idea.
And Karen, did you mention, I know sign language counts as a foreign language, but it doesn't count for our year here because there's no checkpoint test. Is that true?
That may be true. I don't recall what that answer was. I feel like I would have to go back and get that for you for sure.
Can't you create a local checkpoint though?
I remember it technically
all
counting
the
as a foreign
checkpoints
language.
are local.
Yeah, you just create a checkpoint. I mean,
But we don't have that teacher. So that was the problem.
Oh, okay.
She's a DL teacher, and when you talk about certifications, she even shows up as somebody who doesn't have her, even though she has all these certs for teachers of deaf students and all. It's still not exactly the New York State thing that they're trying to work with the state ed department on. It's been tough for that district.
that's when you just take your lumps on.
What'd you say, Frank?
That's when you just take your lumps on.
I think that's what they do.
On your report, they always do a state report and it says non-certified teacher. I'll take my lumps. You just take your lumps. Like, okay, it's a non-certified teacher. They're probably more certified than 90 other people, but on paper they're not. Oh well,
Right. So you're saying that you might be able to make that work and then just take a slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
Got you.
Sometimes you have to make decisions that are best for kids.
Yeah.
Sorry, I shouldn't be saying that to board members in public, but it's we do it. We can get waivers too, by the way.
Like permission.
So I think my walk away is you're saying you guys are going to really explore this and then maybe have something to suggest in the fall, but not for the fall.
Something to suggest by December.
December.
Yeah, fall.
For the budget process.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
because I start having everybody work on budget requests in October, November. So we'll have to have our work cut done and for requisition, and also our course requests go out to teachers in the fall. So
Okay.
it would be more like December, January for us to be able to have a clearer plan of what we could do. But what would both of you ideally want to see?
I'm up for anything. I mean, just going off of what the community wants, I'd be willing to hear any proposal. Rachel, I don't want to speak for you.
Yeah, I whatever you can come up with is what we want to hear. What, Frank, you've been, and Karen, all of you have been so creative and
Right.
so energetic in trying to find options to expand the kids' horizons and give them the chances that, even though we're a small district, they rarely, so that's what I want to.
What I'm
I
going
mean,
to say is pathways, Trish.
What?
What
I'm
I'm
sorry,
going to
what?
say is pathways. So not exploration, but pathways. So it's not giving the kids an enrichment opportunity is what you're looking for. You're looking for a pathway opportunity that helps supplant or supplement some of the work that like Spanish would do or other things, right? To give kids an alternate choice. Because exploration is they can do Spanish and Italian or one of the Romance languages. So, but a pathway is a clear set, instead of just doing 1 year of exploration, giving them an opportunity. That's kind of where we're going. Am I correct in saying that? Or are you guys fine with both? Maybe another pathway and exploration?
Yeah, go ahead, Trish.
I was just gonna say anything is better than where we are right now. And I guess I'd have to reread what the community suggested, but I liked Rachel's point about the cultural part. If we are trying to pick and choose what we're gonna try to offer, but go ahead, Rachel. What were you?
Yeah,
thinking?
no, I was just remembering a friend who has a kid who's a junior now. When she was in 6th grade, this is a school in Jersey, so different school, but they have 4 different languages offered, and the kids each take 1 semester, 1 quarter of each. And then they choose and then they have like a little bit more commitment, investment, understanding of what they're jumping into. The idea that the language that they're choosing might have a different alphabetic language as well as a different language. So I'm no way suggesting that there are 4 options and there are 4 quarters or something, but just the idea that there's the exposure to 4 different things, because the opportunity to learn that different languages have different names for, very often the first words you learn are mother and father and things. So learning those different languages and their different names for things that are so close to you often exposes you in a way that, just eating a food does not.
I mean, it's not all about what Rachel and I are thinking. I mean, what is anyone else? Kelly, Jen, Rick, Karen? What do you think would be good for our district?
Well, I think the survey is important, but the survey stated they want options for our students, right?
Yeah.
I think like the survey might say we want turf, right? Or doesn't mean, but I mean, serious though, or we want lights, or we want this, or it's great, but that might not be everything we do. So it's coming down to saying, okay, what does the survey actually tell us? Well, if somebody says I want turf, that means they want a better athletic facility, right? If they're saying they want 4 language options, they're saying they want better choice for cultural, inclusion for our kids. And I think we have to really look at what's hidden in the middle, right? What is the real statement here? And then how do we help meet those needs based on our kids, and also viability of how we sustain what we're doing here. Kelly or Karen or anyone? Sorry, I totally cut everybody off.
No, I think that it's an interesting thought process of, is it pathways or just kind of exposure? And that's a tough, in a district our size, getting multiple pathways will be difficult, regardless of what it is. Now, unless we can get commitments long-term for DL classes, which is also a challenge because any kind of distance learning is hard. I mean, we talk, even having meetings like this, everything over the computer is hard. So there's trade-offs. But whether or not kids, and I know you couldn't find somebody, but if you had somebody that did teach 4 and kids throughout high school got to take a little bit of each, that would be great. That's a pipe dream. That's not that's not reality. So I think just seeing what the options are would be important.
Anyone else?
I was just going to say, when I was talking with some people looking at distant learning, I know it's harder, but one of the stumbling blocks was the fact that we had to make sure we offer that to middle school as well, because so many of our students come already with, they already have their Spanish 1, they're ready for Spanish 2 in 9th grade, but DL doesn't necessarily go down to a middle school, like a full middle school classroom. So they're going to be trying to find 8th graders in, a 9th grade class on DL. Might be a little different. So that was just one of the things we have to consider, is how to make sure we're partnering with the right way. So we're making sure that we're not blocking our, they're taking Spanish 1 and then they're coming to high school and they're taking, Italian, or trying to find a way to have an 8th grade version of whatever, 7th grade version, whatever, so we can make sure that continuum is accurate. So
It's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. All right. If no one has anything else, I'm glad we at least started talking about it.
Well, we've been talking about it. I don't think we've talked about it publicly up until this point. It's just been something I'm not ready yet, to be honest with you. I don't have where I usually like to be before I start having more conversations. I'm just not even close yet.
Okay.
If we're going to move on now, do you mind if I let the principals go? Really?
No, I don't. Rachel,
Yeah.
Rick, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
thank you guys.
It's good to see
thank you for your help.
Bye,
Yeah.
Thank
guys.
you.
Bye,
Bye,
Rick.
Jen.
Bye,
Bye,
Jen.
Rick.
New York State assessments, I just wanted to state basically they're doing them.
And they count.
And they count. And accountability's back up. So I'll just say this, it's okay. Okay, whatever. They're doing them. I think it's important, with accountability wise or whatever, great. Let's in the end, it's going to be, how did our kids do based off of the standards? Did we meet our needs based off of where we are, and how can we help improve for our kids? If we use it as look at it as a local assessment, except for regions. I don't want to talk about that right now because I'm going to talk about that in 2 seconds. And we look at it as a local assessment and use it based off of our curriculum work that we're doing, it's a positive tool. The other ones, the Regents exams, we're going to do a lot of work with our staff and our students get them ready for the fact that they're coming. I will tell you, staff will get nervous about it. I'm like they said, Regents, and I got heart palpitations, and there was no reason why. We have kids in 11th grade that have never sat for a high stakes test. Never. We have kids in 8th grade who are taking algebra or science. This is their first year. They don't know what it's like. 9th grade, again, could be those kids again, first time doing it, or their second time if they're in biology or geometry. They've missed 2 years of Regents. Their sophomore year, they've missed their already 2 years, and now our juniors have missed their first 3 Regents exams. I will tell you, my son is a junior this year, and he's got to sit for 2 out of the 5 that he needs because 3 were exempt. So and you throw on the fact that these high stakes tests, or you have kids with learning disabilities, if they don't get a 65 on that Regents exam, they can get a 50 on the ELA. They can get a 55, but they won't get a Regents diploma, right, Karen? They would end up getting a local. So there is a pressure there for these kids that just comes out of it. And we want to make sure that we kind of de-emphasize that a lot for them. I don't even talk about it at home right now. It's the idea of just doing it and doing it well. Am I nervous about our test? No, our teachers teach really well. They've done this, and we've made it clear from the beginning of the COVID pandemic, 2 years ago. I said it's not about how much content you make or the curriculum that you hit with your rigor. It's about making sure we meet the needs of our kids of where they at and how we move them forward. And so they're coming. It is what it is, but they're here.
Do you feel there's anything we need to do to help support the teachers any differently than we are?
We're just going to have a lot more conversations as an admin team
Mhm.
with them and stuff, and having more conversations about how to support kids and how to support them. And again, no teachers ever lost a score because of APPR, right? The one thing I think we do have to talk about in our community, though, and I think this is important, is that if we do get on a list, right? Let's, one of the state lists, and Voorheesville's never been on it before because, say, one of our subgroups underperforms, our economically disadvantaged or our special education students, which were, we were a pre-TCIS school beforehand, there is a possibility that you can get on a list this year because of the fact of, where everything is. You really don't know. So that's there, but I mean, the understanding that, oh, well, it happens and we're going to move forward. I just don't think we have to. It's important to do them. It's important we take the test, but the accountability aspect of it is, I don't think it's something that we have to worry too much of. Am I wrong, Karen or Kelly? It's there. It is what it is.
It is what it is. Yeah.
No, I absolutely, they just do their best, and it doesn't matter, so to speak. But they canceled the January regions somewhat late in the game. And
They're not gonna-
there's no, well,
Listen, I will tell you this. You say, well, I will tell you. I was 20 feet away from the deputy commissioner and commissioner of education, where they looked at 400 superintendents and said, we're going to have Regents exams.
And they sent the memo the other day.
It's not changing. This is happening.
It's like, this is happening, people.
And they applied for the waiver for the 3 through 8 and got denied. So,
And the denial came really quickly too. It wasn't like it wasn't the year before where they took their time and really thought about. They were like, nope.
No, this is definitely happening with Regents exams.
Which is really funny in the face of the understanding that many more kids were able to graduate when there were no Regents exams. It really misses an opportunity to look at the value or the I don't know the right word to put, meaning, purpose, something here, the impetus behind them when they are not there and more students are able to succeed and achieve.
As long as there's something that's there that keeps I'm sorry, I'm just one of those ones that, if you don't have rigor or an expectation of where as a benchmark people have to be, then it's very easy for some schools to lower those expectations but still graduate a large amount of students, or still have this high, this high thing going out where maybe the product isn't as good.
I hear what you're saying, and I'm going to assume that none of that happened.
Frank, with what you said that they're going to happen and we might get on a list and it is what it is, which I totally agree with. I guess any way possible to make the teachers believe that that's the case, because I'm sure it's nerve-wracking for them, even if they hear you say that, and then they probably still feel a lot of pressure.
Well, they're professionals.
I agree, but
They
as long as the message.
Oh, we are, and we've been messaging that as much as we can. But I will tell you, I worked in a high school for 15, 16 years. It doesn't matter. High school teachers, they want, they want their kids to be successful, and they want to be able to say they did, their kids met the requirements and hit the standards. It doesn't matter, because even if you say it doesn't count, those teachers will look at it and say, oh, here's how my kids did. They're going to internalize it because our staff are, they're dedicated professionals. We are going to have a lot of these conversations. We are. But in the end, high school staff, especially ours, they really are passionate about the work that they do.
Right.
Yeah.
As a side question, I know there was back and forth of Regents, do they count as your final grade? Do they, and we haven't had Regents in so many years now. So is that just up to the individual teacher?
No, wasn't there something past year, Karen, about
Could you repeat that question? I'm sorry.
how much the Regents
Will-
weight your final grade?
Yeah, now that we have Regents tests, how do they impact your grade in your class?
They, I think our board we have it in our policy, right? That it can't be more than 4% of the overall grade.
Is that because of my recollection was something was coming down the pike from the Board of Regents to say that they couldn't be incorporated into the grade anymore.
The Board of Regents encourage you not to incorporate Regents into the exam. But
Okay.
there's nothing out there saying that you can't. So I believe,
What's your
Intent is to keep it separate, is what they say.
And what's your recommendation or thought on that?
my recommendation is to follow the current policy that the board has passed.
so 4%?
Well, that's the right. I mean, that's what we have, and that's what we currently have discussed. If that's something that the board would want to relook at, I'd be more than happy to do a deep dive into it and have those conversations and look into it further. But right now, it's what has already been there. And I believe it's 4%.
Up to, but no more than. I feel like it would be weird to adjust it in a year that is the first year regents are returning after being absent for so long.
Yeah, you wouldn't make a change this year. I mean, it's too late.
No.
But you are kind of making a change without making a change because they haven't counted for 2 years.
I'm not offering anything. I mean, I'm just saying there's no way I would think of touching it right now, for sure. And I thought that policy went into existence because the regents were saying we are no longer going to allow it to count or something. There was like we're changing the way it's scored or something.
They were talking about some specific stuff.
Going to 1 to 5 or
yeah, that's what they were looking at, but they had no definite end date on that. And then we had the pandemic, or maybe a year later we had the pandemic, or a year and a half later. So you're right. At one point they were talking about to try to break schools away from that. They'd be looking at maybe just giving 5 levels or something.
But they do encourage schools to not have it as part of the overall course requirement.
They do.
I'm not looking to do a deep dive either. I was just curious.
Okay. Again,
Nope.
I have no issues. I more than have, I can go anyway on those ones and look into it. So,
Nope.
Last one.
Good segue.
Last on the agenda, I think, was the article that you brought up, Rachel. I don't know if you want to just
It
comment
was
on
an
it.
article, but it was an interesting, part of a bigger picture where it just, how does grading work and stuff. And Frank and I had a chance to talk about it a little bit. It's a humongous topic and it's really interesting. And Frank, you shared something. I had the chance to read that, or a few things or something, and it's so true. Like when you look at a grade, what does it mean? And parent-teacher conferences are great in elementary school because the teacher and the report cards are great. Also, teachers very often put a comment about something about the kid, and so you understand a little bit more. And with the grade book, we have all these different tools, but what does that grade mean in the little tiny box? That's the culmination of the teacher's massive amount of effort to relay information and help support a kid, and the kid's massive amount of effort to follow guidelines and follow, and get things in. What does it mean, and how does it work? And Frank?
Yeah, so I shared Joe Feldman's Grading for Equity. I shared a snippet from that book. So Joe Feldman does a lot of work all over the nation, honestly, and Maine or Massachusetts has basically adopted it, his work. I know Shen has been doing this work for about 3 or 4 years now with Joe Feldman. They're actually bringing him in next year. It's, by the way, extremely expensive, but they're actually bringing him in for work. But the article, the one thing I took away from the article is that, yes, they're seeing test scores across the board are down and student grades are up, and there's a discrepancy in between those two. But I found it interesting that there's at least a benchmark, right, that people are seeing. There's a benchmark that lays across the standards or something, some standard of assessment that people were looking at based on those grades. It's kind of something I just thought about. But the grading for equity work basically talks about, you know, how grades are developed, what does a grade mean, and it just took 2 students and teachers' grades and the way that their grades are done, and basically just kind of showed how those kids, you know, could get the same exact grade, even though they might have different content knowledge based upon the effort or work or the structure of what the teacher is grading. So I thought it went very along really well with the article. And that is work that I'd like to start doing at the district with some of the DEI stuff we're doing. But again, grades can be a hard conversation, and you really got to do a lot of pre-setting and a lot of work to get to that point. You know, a while back in a district I was at, we just set up a basic, you know, homework is only going to count for 5% of your grade. And, you know, it took a shared decision-making group in a building, and then a district-wide shared decision-making group 2 years to come to a consensus on how much homework was going to weigh. You know, so, and it was very contentious, you know, so you got to do a lot of work and a lot of understanding, a lot of teaching to people about this and having a lot of these conversations, because it's really rooted in what your beliefs are, what you see, your biases, your unconscious biases. There's a lot of that goes into grading. And as I said to Rachel, I said, it's a really deep topic.
It's huge. And it's also fascinating because I think about it, and teachers have you know, every teacher teaches different subject, but each teacher may two teachers teaching the same subject may teach it differently, and their way of transmitting information, even though they might be using the same, you know, bridges or whatever it is, may be different, and they may feel differently about homework. You know, a 5th grader next door might get homework every day that's much more intense, and versus another 5th grader might just have one small homework packet for the month or the week, excuse me. But it's that range of reliance on different tools it's fascinating. But what does that end up meaning for the students' achievement and understanding of achievement? And that's kind of what a grade to me is it's like an understanding of achievement, you know, and mastery, I guess, the language, to use the language. So yeah, it'd be interesting to me to see more of this in a conversation.
That what you just said there really makes me think about how valuable having you know, number 1, 2, 3, 4 or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in America, you know, versus 76, and what does that mean?
Yeah, what goes into the 76, and you know, the scale of 1 to 5, it is that, you know, and it is still a numerical scale, and you know, we're not going to start putting up grapes or apples or pears or something to delineate mastery, but yeah, what does a 76 mean? It depends, and that's a weird thing to say when it's a number. It's like 76 depends.
Yeah.
You know, does the kid walk away from that really understanding the information, or did they just turn in all their homework and participate in class?
Those 2 students in that article or that snippet,
Isabel and Tangent,
very, very different students who did nothing the same.
Yeah.
And they end up ultimately with that same number. So,
and what is frightening to me is that Tangela, I believe, was the one who did all of her homework, but she wasn't succeeding on the exams. So she went without getting the additional support that might have helped her master the topic because of wherever the cutoff was for support. And so there can be students who know how to work with the requirements of the class and to fulfill all those requirements so that they topically look like they're succeeding, but they walk out of the class at the end of the day, week, month, or semester, or year, and they haven't mastered the topic. They've just
then go to the next level up,
right?
And so not really have necessarily all the skills that they. But it looks like They do because of that number.
Right. And they've missed out on the opportunity to get that extra support. Because they've really done everything that needs to be done. And but also maybe they just don't perform well on an exam because of whatever stress comes in, or they have bad day, that kind of a feeling of frustration that you sit down and your brain just kind of freezes, as mine does every once in a while.
I will say though, good teachers, and a lot of teachers now are doing this more and more. They're finding ways to meet the kids' assessment levels, not just a basic test, right? They're doing other testing for kids, like they're checking auditory wise, they're asking questions, they're doing different ways to assess a child's understanding and mastery level. And that's why these conversations are important to have, because it helps move forward the thinking and overall purpose of what a grade is, right? Kelly, you're a teacher.
Well, I
None
think
of us here actually give grades except for you.
I think it's important that we spend a lot of time teaching kids to advocate for themselves. And it starts in the elementary school, teaching them to ask questions, to raise their hand. And when something doesn't make sense, to say that, because you're right, they can do all the right things. They can get help. Somebody's doing their homework for them at home, so it looks like they know what they're doing, or helping a lot on the homework, whatever it may be. It comes from a good place, but teaching them to self-advocate is very important, and keeping in mind that many kids don't do well on tests. They freeze. They have a lot of anxiety, and that was my one of my concerns with the first article that we read, is that grades being up, but the test scores aren't, because our kids are also dealing with things now that we didn't necessarily take into account, or we are paying a lot more attention to that social emotional piece. So, kids are learning, but maybe they're only learning here because that's all they're available for. They're coming in and they carry a lot of burdens. Our kids with high trauma scores are higher than ever. And so there's a whole different group of kids in front of us now than ever before. So that's certainly playing a role as well.
Kelly, those kids that were they tracked scores, not specific kids, from 2000, was it till 2019? It was 30 years prior.
For 10 years, right? Wasn't it?
No, it was 30. There was a 30-year span of testing, I think. So that you're pointing out that these kids, over 30 years, they're dealing with, walking around with a smartphone and finding out that someone doesn't like them as they walk from one class to another. Not that they'd ever be on their phone in school or anything, but so there's all those different stresses that have come through in a different way.
Well, I think that as a society, we recognize those as things that are impacting learning. And maybe when we were kids, not so much, even though that we had classmates with some of those same experiences that were hindering them, but now we're recognizing them, and schools are taking action to support kids in that, whereas before it wasn't. So again, that's something that's impacting our teaching, because we have to account for so many other things. And, as I said to Karen today, it's Maslow before Bloom. We're meeting the kids' basic needs before we worry about the other parts. They're all very important, but kids need to feel safe and secure before we can go any further. And I don't want to, that's a whole nother pathway we can go down, but it never comes down to just a number.
No, but there has to be some way of breaking it down to something at the end of the day, because they're just, there has to be something. But I totally, that what you just said is true, and I'm saying it's true, and I hate saying but then what do we do, I guess, is the question. Then how do we?
I guess we just don't put so much focus on test score. I mean, we don't want to worry about Regents exams, and we don't want to, I look at the kids and I know if my kids are growing. I know if my kids know what I'm teaching them. And I want them to feel good about those, even if they don't meet some other arbitrary number, those conversations about what they're doing and what they're succeeding with. I don't have the answer.
No, but I will tell you a pathway to get there, though. You know, this comes along with tying it to one of our goals and how we then meet our kids' needs, and then having those conversations as part like of the SMART goal, right? Like, we should be having these conversations in our building leadership teams. We should be having these conversations within PD days. You should be, you know, we should be immersing our staff in these conversations over a period of time. Not that it's, oh my God, we got to do something, we got to change it, but it's an exploration of where we go. And from that exploration of grades and these conversations, then we can start talking about, all right, then what do we have in our classroom? What does it look like for our kids? And really start doing dives in. And, you know, that's how you get to enact change in a real way. I mean, we can have a conversation and say, all right, well, a test got to mean something or a test doesn't. And we can tell people, but that's not going to change the culture of the environment that we're working in. You have to actually start doing it at a systemic level of having the conversations and having people really start talking about it more. I mean, let's be honest, staff don't have time, nor do they sit and talk about what a grade means, right? They don't. They know what their grade means in their classroom, but if you're going to have a conversation grades 9 through 12 of norming grades and what they are and how we're impacting kids, you have to create that opportunity. And I think that's the pathway that we have to look for in the future. But you do so knowing the steps to get there so it doesn't alienate people or stop the conversation before it happens. Because Kelly, I don't know if you agree, or Karen, you agree, grades can be a hot button topic. So,
All right.
Topic we're
Well,
talking about, though.
well said. So hopefully those conversations can be integrated when there's the opportunity. And I know we're running real late, so I'm not trying to push us to end, but I know people have places to go. Is there anything else anyone wants real quick? I'm sorry this went a little long, but thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah, thank you guys for your energy and your thoughts through this whole process. It's
Thank you.
huge.
All right. Have a good night, everyone. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.